New developments at Northwestern University. Mike Polinsky has now resigned amid continued criticism of his hiring. We talk about that. There's a new triple double king in the NBA, and his name is Russell Westbrook. Also, Georgia Governor Brian Kemp has signed a bill that will allow college athletes to earn money off of their name, image, and likeness as early as June 1st. We discuss all that and more right here coming up on Fourth and Just Us. Welcome, everyone, to Fourth and Just Us. So excited for another episode this evening. Lericia Harris here alongside the former athletic director himself, Kevin Anderson, as well as the professor, Dr. Leonard Moore. We welcome you all as you are watching us on Facebook Live and YouTube. Don't forget, while you are watching us on these social platforms, go ahead and like us and subscribe to us so that you can always know when we are dropping these shows, when we are dropping the new topics for the shows, as well as other conversations that we like to have with the audience, those who are watching. So we are excited for today's topic, which is Black women and the business of sports. We have an awesome guest that will be joining us later in the show, but we got to get right to it and talk about this recent development that just came out literally before the show aired. Northwestern University, the recent hire at the athletic director position, Mike Polinsky, resigned amid criticism of his hiring. We know that the faculty and other students, they had a protest and they rallied because of this hiring. And all of it is stemming from a lawsuit and lack of confidence because of this lawsuit. Basically, within the lawsuit, it alleges that Northwestern University, a cheerleader, was sexually harassed and assaulted by alumni and fans, specifically accusing Polinsky of knowing that the cheerleaders would be forced to engage in certain commercial sex acts. So that, of course, hinted the protests and the rallies, and now we know again that he has now resigned from this position. Was this a good thing for him to do, Doc?
I read his sort of resignation letter, and he said something that I felt was profound. He said that because of the circumstances surrounding his hire, he knew he wouldn't be able to be successful in that role. And so for me, I'm just wondering why it sort of took 10 days. I think oftentimes university presidents often get pressured by influential alums, some people who just support the athletic department. But for me, it just shows, Lericia, that, you can criticize this generation for being woke. You can talk about how they're in the cancel culture or, the term they use called snowflakes. But it just proves over and over that this generation of young people, they are smart, they're intelligent, and they have no problem confronting authority. And let's be clear, it was largely because of the student protest that got reason why Polinsky resigned.
AD, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, from the very beginning, when they made the hire, it was flawed. And Northwestern is a great school with a great program. And I just don't understand it. And I can't see how they got to where they are now with everything that came along with this. So probably the right thing at the right moment. But I don't think it needed to go this far. So hopefully they will now choose somebody who's going to lead the department and well represent the school.
Well, let me follow up this, Lericia. Who would step into this role now? Because there was Darren Rovell from ESPN posted a letter signed by, about 100 alums and former student athletes. And so I'm just wondering, Kevin, you're a former athletic director. Would you step into a position like this in the wake of a AD who had been on the job for 10 days resigned? Would you take a job like this?
Leonard, it's a great job with great people, and it's a great program. So this was a mistake, but we're looking at the president's not resigning, but he's retiring. So there's going to be new leadership at the top. I think that this is just a flaw in a process. And I think that, they can bring the right person in, but they need to bring the right person in. They need to bring somebody in with ties to Northwestern that, that has a grasp on the program and that wants to do right by the institution. So that narrows their field drastically.
And this person who they bring in, again, ultimately will have to clean up this the situation that's happening now. But I think, like you said, AD, if they bring in the person who has ties to the institution, who has the best interest of the institution, it would definitely sort of lead them in the right direction. Moving on now to the new NBA triple-double king. His name is Russell Westbrook. And guys, I was able to be in the building when it happened. We were literally sitting there counting every rebound, every point, every assist that he had leading up to that moment. Russell Westbrook has now broken Hall of Famer Oscar Robertson's 47-year-old record with his 182nd career triple-double. It happened on Monday. So my question to you all, should he still be considered a great despite not having a ring?
Lericia, I think Russell Westbrook is the best point guard in the NBA. And I've never really understood why he's not appreciated, the hate he gets. And, a triple-double used to be a really big deal, but it seemed like when Westbrook started getting them, it seemed like, it didn't matter. And here's my issue on this thing about he doesn't have a ring, Lericia. And here's what upsets me when I hear a lot of these sports journalists talk about he doesn't have a ring, he doesn't ring. Hell, do you have a Pulitzer Prize? That's what I want to ask them. They make it seem like if you don't have a ring, then somehow you shouldn't get vaulted to that next level status. And Lericia, in your field, getting a Pulitzer, that's the cream of the crop right there. But I don't think having a ring, makes it. I mean, we're not talking about a boxer or golf or bowling or swimming, an individual sport. It's a team sport. And if I had to pick one of the top 5 players in the NBA right now, for my starting 5, Westbrook would be at the 1. Steph would be at the 2, LeBron would be at the 3, KD would be at the 4, and Embiid would be at the 5. Russell Westbrook, in my opinion, flat out is the best point guard in the NBA.
Okay, AD, you got to come back and give us your 5 too. But let us know. Do you agree with Doc that they need to put some respect, like Birdman said, on Russell Westbrook's name?
Well, definitely, because the Big O was probably one of the best basketball players ever. And for him to break the Big O's record, it says something. I think Russell's problem is that he speaks out and he speaks his mind and that he does not mince his words. But the other thing is, and I commend him highly on this, is that he said that a ring doesn't justify the kind of player and the kind of person he is. It's great to win championships and everything else, but he told us that he's not defined by a ring. Hats off to Russell. God bless him, and I'm glad he broke the record.
And I like him, Lericia, because this brother comes to play every night. I lost all respect. For my man, with the Clippers now, taking all the time off and all that. Play basketball, man. And what I like about Westbrook, he's going to go, Lericia, 100 miles an hour every single play. And when Harden got traded and KD left OKC, Russell Westbrook was right there. I never heard him complain. I never heard him talking about getting with a super team. He is, in my mind, a throwback to the old school ball player.
Hey, Doc, one other thing.
100%. Go ahead.
One other thing. So when you look at where Washington was when he joined the team and where they are now, they're about to make the playoffs. They were nowhere near that. I mean, they were on the bottom. So that speaks to what Russell's all about. And everywhere he's gone, they've won. Now, have they won a championship? No. But, I mean, if we look at other players, Charles Barkley. Charles is a great basketball player. He never won a championship. So there's a lot of people in that category. So does that make them less than because they don't have a ring?
Agreed. But I can honestly say, you all, watching him on Monday as he broke that record, and even prior to, you could see just his leadership exude throughout the team. He made those around him better. He made everyone sort of pick up the speed. He made everyone move faster. try to think smarter, everything like that. And you could see his attitude, like you mentioned, AD. But I think it was what the guys needed, because honestly, Monday's game was a great game against the Hawks, and they're playing again right now against the Hawks here in Atlanta. But that game Monday was very, very good. It was a back and forth situation, and I like watching Russell Westbrook. I think he's a great player, and I don't think that a ring should define his greatness or not. Right now, he broke this record. To me, that's great. And he should be considered one of the greatest to do it. Moving on now to the Georgia NIL bill, name, image, and likeness bill. Governor Brian Kemp signed the House Bill 617, which will now allow college athletes to earn money off their name, image, and likeness starting on July 1st. Now, with this new law, though, athletes in the state will be paid for things such as endorsements, autographs, social media posts. However, with the new legislation, there is a bit of a twist. With this twist, though, schools can require athletes to pull up to 75% of their money earned in an escrow account that would then be shared with other athletes. But it would not be able to be withdrawn until a year after they graduate or leave school. Now, it is up to the schools whether or not they instate this requirement. And also, additionally, the bill requires that college athletes in the state take 5 hours of financial literacy and life skills workshop to prepare for receiving the compensation. Do you agree with the twist in this legislation that the schools should be able to pull up to 75% of the money and put it in an escrow account? Now, again, I said that particular fact had to be, it was up to the schools whether or not they would instate this rule. Do you agree with that? And if the schools do instate this rule, will they receive backlash? AD?
Well, first of all, here we go with Georgia again and some of these crazy laws that they pass. So who's good if they have to give 75% back to the school, then who's going to pay the taxes on that? Because this money that they will earn is going to be taxed. So there's one question right there. The other thing is that if I'm doing something to earn money, and that this is my thing, why should I have to share it with the other athletes? I mean, that's what the athletic department's for, and that's what the scholarships are for and everything else. So one of the reasons why the NIL was manifested is because it was to help and make sure that these young people are getting what they deserve because of the investment that's being made. And it's primarily in basketball and football. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I don't know who wrote it and where they came up with that, but I'm sure that if they continue to do so, and then you look at some of these other states and how they've done it, I mean, there's going to be recruiting advantage, because why would I go to Georgia and pay 75% when I could go and play in California and keep 100% of the money?
This is ludicrous to me, and I don't know where this stuff comes from. I don't know how this stuff makes it out of the committee. It's like there are no adults in the room. Now here's the thing. What we've heard for the last 3 or 4 years, right, when Trump was in office and even now, was, socialism, right? They want to turn this into a socialist country. Now, what is more socialist than, let's say I play women's basketball at Georgia Tech, and let's say I have a hell of an endorsement deal, all right? Let's say with Athleta, something like that. You're telling me you're going to take the money that I negotiated, right, that I've built up my brand to get this endorsement deal, and you're going to take 75% of it and you're going to spread it around to everybody else? That's not only socialism, it is borderline communism. And so I just don't understand. It's very hypocritical. And my question is, we already do that on some levels, right? You take the revenue from the money from the revenue generating sports and you spread it out to give scholarships. Now there's an opportunity for these students to leverage their name, image, and likeness. And you're going to take that money and divide it up? Lericia, I just don't understand. And hopefully that was just written in there to satisfy one aspect of the constituency. But to Kevin's point, I couldn't see any university saying we're going to take 75% of an endorsement deal that you negotiate. All right. It is completely un-American, and it goes against our capitalist ethos.
Hey, Doc, but here's the I'm sorry, but here's the other thing. here's the other thing we need to look at is that, so if you read the laws, that the athlete can't use the branding and the logos of the school and all of that. So does that mean now that they'll get with the 75%, they'll be able to use those brands and those logos and everything else that comes along with it? And if not, then it makes it even crazier than what we think now.
It's absurd. And I mean, but I think this goes back to what we were talking about several weeks ago. You know, the leadership coming out of Indianapolis has got to be a lot better. And I think we would all agree with that. You know, I know Emmer just got a new contract, a new 3-year deal. And I think it was because LSU wanted to hire him to be president again. But, you know, just these laws just don't make any sense. And the tragic part is that the student athletes and their parents are kind of caught in the middle. And so we will see how this plays itself out.
AD, what do you think the backlash will be for any institution who might actually instate this particular rule?
Well, as I brought up, I mean, if I was recruiting against Georgia, that's the first thing that I'm going to tell the young man or young woman that I'm sitting down with is that that's your money. So whatever you do and how you obtain it, that's your money. But if you want to go to Georgia, you're going to give 75% of that up. So you probably will be losing money rather than gaining money. So, you know, if one of the things you're looking at is that you want to take advantage of your brand, Georgia's probably not the state you want to go and play anything in.
Answer this question for me. You know, Lericia, I'm in Texas, right? And I think Texas and Georgia have been places where Black people have prospered. You agree, Lericia? You know, we come here to Texas, Georgia, get a job, make some money, get a house. How come in Texas and in your state of Georgia, Lericia, we have all this Black prosperity, but we have some of the craziest politicians who get some of the craziest legislation passed? It makes no sense to me. You know, I tell people Texas, Houston, Dallas, Austin, San Antonio is a Black Mecca. All right, you can come here and literally come up. Seen it in Atlanta as well. But I'm just amazed how, on the one hand, we can come here and prosper, but on the other hand, we have politicians at the legislature who pass crazy bills, you know? So
I don't know, Doc. I don't know. That's a question that I ask all the time because like you said, I see it. You literally see people come here and prosper. And yeah, that's a question I've been asking, and maybe we should pose it to the audience to see what they say as well about that.
So Lericia, one more thing, and maybe you were just about to bring it up, that I really like your mayor. I think she's a very intelligent, sharp person, and she's doing a great job. And so now I understand she's only going to run for one term. She's not going to run for re-election. I mean, yes. Why is that?
I'm glad you mentioned it. That's what I was going to say. And later, Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, she held a news conference letting everyone know that she was not going to seek a second term. And I'm going to read you a quote that she said during the press conference. It says, "The last 3 years have not been at all what I would have scripted for our city." She cited a major cyber attack in the first months in her in office and a federal investigation into corruption under her predecessor, former Mayor Kasim Reed. And she said those particular incidents seem to literally suck the air out of City Hall. And then, of course, there was the pandemic. There was the social justice movement. There was a madman in the White House. Those are things that she stated during the press conference. And she said it was abundantly clear to her that it was time to pass the baton to someone else. So from my perspective, and then I'll let you all share, I think that she knew that she wanted to do this. You know how everyone always has a goal or something that they want to accomplish, a certain position that maybe they want to, sit in or get to, but you never know what that position or what it's going to take to maintain that position until you're actually in it. You don't know what it's going to be like until you're actually there. And I think now that she had that opportunity to sit in this mayoral position, she might have seen that, hey, this is just too much for me. This is either taken away from me as a person or her and her personal life with her family, etc. Maybe she saw that the political game was just something that she did not want to be a part of anymore. And I think that those could be reasons of why she decided to not seek a second term. And I think that's perfectly okay. You came in, you experienced something, you obtained a goal that you had. And if you see that it's not for you and you decide not to seek reelection, okay, cool. Pass the baton to someone else. I think it's totally okay that she decided to do this, especially if she feels like this is going to be good for her and her peace of mind. That's just my take on it. What were your thoughts, Doc?
I don't know. Being mayor is a tough job. When black mayors were getting elected in the late 60s, early 70s, Maynard Jackson, Atlanta, Carl Stokes, Cleveland, they talked about then how being mayor, the opportunity to dramatically improve people's lives, how it was amazing. I mean, you could improve people's quality of life immediately, but they also talked about you were very close to the people, right? And so expectations were almost unrealistic. And so when they had the two Senate seats up for grabs in Georgia this past back in January, I told my boy, if I'm Mayor Bottoms, I'm going to get one of them Senate seats, and I'm gonna chill in DC. I'm gonna get my bread. I'm gonna legislate or go be a congressperson. But understand, you in the day-to-day grind of Atlanta. Now check this out. I heard Buckhead wants to secede, and I read something, Lericia. They said if Buckhead is successful seceding, they said that is 40% of the city's tax base. So in many ways, Atlanta looks like a prosperous city, but it is a city that has some economic problems. Violence is off the chain, but I think a lot of us sort of liked her. We sort of connected with her, a sister who went to Florida A&M, you know what I mean? And I'm just glad she's making the best decision for her and her family.
AD?
Big loss for the city. I really admire the job that she has done and how she's stood up and represented herself and the people that she's representing. She had some major challenges, and every time she stepped up to the plate and she delivered. So, it's sad for the city. Good for her, because I hear what you're saying, Lericia. That family and other things come first, and sometimes these jobs take too much out of you and don't give back enough. So, I applaud her for the job that she's done.
And I'm sure you never know. She might surprise us, and she might take another step in the political world, go a different direction. She just might. We don't know, but we shall see, right? It's time for our favorite segment, you guys. Who put raisins in the potato salad?
Oh, hell no, Karen. Keep your bland-ass potato salad to yourself.
I was waiting on it. Tim Tebow, the tight end, he had a workout with the Jags. And according to Urban Meyer, his staff and other coaches say that he's in incredible shape. Meyer spoke to Chris Collinsworth and stated that the Jags have not signed him. There's a thought going around, but he's getting close to making a decision soon. When you heard that the quarterback...
Oh, hell no, Karen.
When you heard that the quarterback turned MLB star, turned tight end, was making this transition, do you think he put raisins in the potato salad, AD?
I don't even think he's coming to the cookout. But, there's so many talented people that play tight end and other positions, and he's 33, and to bring him back, I believe it's a publicity stunt. And if it isn't, then the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to have a long way to go.
Oh, hell no, Karen.
Now, although I'm a diehard Ohio State Buckeye, I got my degree on the wall in there, I've never been an Urban Meyer fan. Never been a fan of his at all. I cheer for the guys, never been a fan of his. I think his tenure with the Jaguars will be a disaster. This is the second move he's made that makes it that lets me know he thinks he's still in college, right? Remember when he hired the strength coach from Iowa who was accused of all the racist stuff? Brought him in there and said, I vetted him. No, and that dude was out of there in a day or two. And now this thing here, Tebow hasn't played. I think he's last on the NFL roster like 8 or 9 years ago. And it's like, it's the hookup. And there's Brian and some other people on Twitter a couple of days ago talking about this is the epitome of white privilege. Hasn't played a down in 9 years, but now he is going to take a training camp spot, for someone more qualified. And, Urban Meyer said, he thinks he'll be good for the program or good for the locker room. Unbelievable that this man was signed to a 1-year contract.
I want to read a tweet from Panthers DT Daquan Jones. He said, "This Tebow deal just shows that personal relationships go further at this level than actual ability." Do you agree with that statement, Doc?
Yeah, I mean, come on, we all have been a benefit of a connection. A connection to me, Lericia, is when you are qualified, right? And somebody knows, put you in front of the line. This is a straight up hookup. This is getting the free cable. I remember in Mississippi, brothers would climb up on the electrical poles, Lericia, and get free cable. This ain't nothing but a hookup. And I remember the former women's track coach here, Bev Kearney, when she got hired, she was the first Black coach of any sport at Texas. And people told her, now, when you get hired, don't go hiring a bunch of Black folks. She said, that's exactly what I'm going to do. They said, why? She said, because if I win, it don't matter. And if I lose, it don't matter. Because I lose, they fire me. And if I win, they don't care what my staff looks like. But this is nothing but an old-fashioned hookup. Again, notice the distinction between connection and hookup. This is a hookup.
Well, AD said he's not even invited to the cookout. Are you inviting him to the cookout, or are you just saying he put raisins in the potato salad?
I think a lot of I think people I talk to say Tebow's a good dude. You know what I'm saying? I think I think a lot of people who support Tebow are problematic to us. You know what I mean? He could kneel with the scripture on his tape with no problem. Colin Kaepernick kneels. Colin Kaepernick still hasn't seen another opportunity in the NFL.
Well, here's another.
Now, I'm sorry.
Here's another example about how different people are treated different ways. Albert Pujols is one of the best people, not a baseball player, but the best people you'll ever encounter on the face of this earth. What he did for the California Angels, Los Angeles Angels, whatever their name is, I mean, model citizen, did well on the baseball field and everything else. For him to be let go the way he did is just, it's unimaginable, and it's just not right. And so now we look at this situation where we have this guy who hasn't played in 8 or 9 years, who was not a great professional quarterback, who I doubt will be a good tight end. He gets welcomed back in, and they usher Albert out in a way where, Albert has to be embarrassed. But the whole organization, the Angel organization, should be embarrassed. So, different world for different folks.
That's right.
Well, we know that, again, it was stated that they have not made a decision on whether or not they will sign him just yet. It is a thought, but that decision could be coming soon. Tim Tebow could potentially be a tight end for the Jacksonville Jaguars under his former college football head coach, Urban Meyer. And remember, Tim Tebow was with the Florida team that actually won 2 national championships with him as a starting quarterback. Today's topic, right, is about Black women and the business of sports. And I'm super, super excited for the guest that we have joining us today, Miss Anuka Brown. She is the Chief Advocacy and Engagement Officer for UNICEF USA. She joined the organization in November of 2017. You all, her list of accomplishments and accolades extends just beyond everything. But prior to this particular position, she was previously the NCAA's Vice President of Women's Basketball Championships, and so much more. We would like to welcome Miss Brown to the show. We greatly appreciate you joining us. Welcome to Fourth and Just Us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. I've listened to a number of the segments. They're really fantastic.
So again, the topic for today is just about Black women and the business side of sports, and us wanting to see more women in this particular area, us wanting to encourage women to look at this particular aspect of the industry. I know that you are a former athlete, right? And just want to know what that transition was like for you as a former athlete yourself, moving over into the professional side of things, the business side of things. What was that like, and why did you make this particular transition over into the business side of sports?
Well, as a baller, way back when. We're talking 40 years ago. I guess I'm saying my age, but I've had an opportunity to watch 40 years of progress or lack thereof in some respects. But back then we weren't doing a whole lot during our summers except balling and doing camps. And so not necessarily prepared to enter the business world. I was fortunate. I had some really strong mentors and just got some opportunities from that. Actually, my first job, I sent a letter in to Eastman Kodak. I was a Kodak All-American, and I just said, listen, I was a Kodak All-American at Northwestern, would love to come and work for you, and they hired me. It was as simple as that, and that was that wonderful connection. So the transition, I would say, was...
Go ahead, Ms. Brown, finish.
Yeah, the transition was, I think it's actually the ability to talk sport in the workplace is an equalizer. It takes the edge off. You have an opportunity to talk to everyone. Many women walk into business and they don't necessarily have that edge. And it was an edge for me, and I used it.
So Anuka, what was your first? Did you go to IBM? Was that your first sort of big exec job, IBM?
I was at 2 years at Eastman Kodak, and then moved to IBM. Okay. And spent the next 11 years.
11 years.
I'm sorry.
When did you say that again? When and how did you make the transition to sports? Sorry.
Sure. Yeah. Great question. Yeah. So, when I had gone and gotten my master's degree, and then was kind of pigeonholed into technology. I had gotten my master's degree, and I did my thesis on aversion to technology. And so then I was hired into Eastman Kodak in a technology capacity. Then I was hired into IBM. And so for the first 5 years, it was really about just, working with the everyday person. I worked in a sales capacity, and I had a fantastic mentor, and he just said, listen, you are really good at what you do, but I know you don't want to do this. And I said, yeah, I'm successful, but this is not my calling. I really have always wanted to be in the sports business. Coming out of school, I really couldn't articulate what it was about the sports business. And I just, I kept saying in the interviews, I love sport. I'm a fan, and nobody cares about that. And I was, the recommendation was to just go get some good experience, understand how everybody, how consumers live and how they make decisions. And so that's what I did. And so IBM, fortunately, was one of those companies that was a sponsor of the Olympic Games. And so they would enable the Olympic Games every 2 years, spending $200 million. And so this particular individual who was in the company, who was my manager at the time, said, I'd love to give you an opportunity to just go volunteer for the Olympic Games. And so we did. It was the Atlanta Games. And I went down there. I got to work in the basketball venue. And I came back, and they hired me in the Worldwide Sports Office. And so that was my entry into sport. And it was because I had a sponsor. I had an executive sponsor that was putting me in positions where I would get that opportunity.
Awesome. I just want to say really quickly before AD jumps in here, I won't hold it against you that you got your master's from Florida State. I won't hold that against you. This is coming from a person who received her master's from the University of Florida. Go ahead, AD.
Well, first of all, Anuka's being kind because she could hoop. She was very good at Northwestern and put Northwestern's women's basketball on the map. She really started them having success as a program. And her daughter was a very good lacrosse player at Northwestern as well. But, I had the opportunity to serve with her on the women's basketball committee. And I could see that business acumen that she brought from IBM. She brought it to the NCAA, and she made that committee and everything she touched more professional with the things that she learned. And she was a phenomenal person and leader of the program and what was going on in the NCAA. So what made you go and work for UNICEF after working at the NCAA?
The experience at the NCAA was fantastic, and I saw my career coming full circle, right? I started out in the sport of basketball, and basketball had opened up so many doors for me. It gave me an opportunity to travel the world, and gave me an opportunity to get a 4-year scholarship at one of the best universities in on the globe. And so this was, the job at the NCAA was then this opportunity to manage the sport and actually see it continue on an upward trajectory, right? And it required really building a strategy that would bring people who aren't familiar with the sport into the sport, right? Increasing some fan loyalty, increasing attendance at the championship level. But I found myself always saying, but what are we doing for the underserved populations in these cities that we visit, right? We would go in and we'd set up these championships and we'd build some legacy programming, but I wanted to make sure it was truly legacy, right? And it was making an impact. It was all about impact for me. And so we wanted to make sure that we could leave programs that were sustainable and that would impact kids. And so when we had that championship at Indiana, in Indianapolis, it was a combined championship. I think it was the 40th year of Title IX. It was a way of just signaling that this 40 years. And so we combined the championship, hosted all 3 championship games at the Bankers Life Arena, and we engaged in a really neat program with some of the Title I schools in the Indianapolis area. Some of the most underserved communities. And this was a simple program, right? It was about teaching young kids social responsibility through service learning. And it was a partnership with UNICEF. So we engaged them. It was simple, low cost Fitbit. And these kids learn that, if I walk 2,500 steps a day, UNICEF will unleash a packet of nutritional, it's called an RUTF packet, right? And it's the stuff that helps kids who are malnourished. And so every day these kids would swipe their band over the tablet for the teacher. And for every 10,000 steps, UNICEF would unleash a packet. So that child went home every day saying, if I don't get these 2,500 steps, somebody's not going to eat tonight. And and it taught these young kids at such a young, these are elementary school kids, no matter where I am in my life, no matter what my situation is, I still have the capacity to impact someone across the globe. And so we did that. We worked with 27 schools in the Indianapolis area. And it was so transformative for these kids. Then UNICEF created a job for me and asked me if I'd be interested in it. And it really was an opportunity for me to go back and do that much more. Right? Because my whole career, I've always wanted to be able to say, what kind of impact are you making? It's not always about the money, but it's about the impact, and whether you're impacting young people or impacting change, right? Forcing change. Those are the things that drive me. And that's how that's what resonates when I think about opportunities.
I'm curious to know, Ms. Brown, what were some of the challenges that you faced on your journey, particularly or specifically being a Black woman in the technology industry and a Black woman in the sport industry and on the business side of it at that? What were some of the challenges that you faced?
It's basic. It's what Black women talk about all the time. When we walk in a room, we are treated differently. The expectations are different. The reservations are different. The expectations that you have to be 3, 4, 5 times better than your counterpart for the same opportunity. And so it's a heavy load. And it's, sometimes in some of these jobs, you feel like my father used to always talk about the I don't know if you know Greek mythology, but the god Sisyphus, who was always like pushing this huge rock up the hill, and he'd get a few steps and it would tumble back. And so when I think about my career, it was like that in some ways. You know, people always like talk about the fact that I've had these amazing opportunities, but in the context of each one of those opportunities, they absolutely had challenges, and so much, and a good portion of it was about the fact that I speak my truth, and it's usually very principled and steeped in integrity, and I cannot be moved. And you are sometimes perceived as, you know, the B word because of that. And so there are different lenses that are used when you critique a Black woman who is a strong, smart and can be shrewd business person.
Why do you think those narratives are there for Black women?
Our history is that we have always towed the line. We've always had to pull, things when throughout history, when our Black men are being killed and destroyed, the women had to make it work and figure it out and keep it going. And so there's an expectation that we are all, nothing moves us. We will continue to do it. And it is a heavy load. And there's also this idea of being tagged as the angry person or not happy, right? Always needing to be in that smile mode. Or when you speak up, it comes from an angry place. And actually, it doesn't come from an angry place. It obviously comes from a place of principle. And so we aren't necessarily given that benefit of the doubt in the business environment. But I will say that I see a change that is among us. And so much of that change is as the voices of young people that are demanding for change.
Anuka, we had Dawn Staley on, actually our first show about 6 weeks ago, and I kind of made the statement, it seems like over the last 10, 15, 20 years, while Black women have always held it down behind the scenes, they knew us brothers with our egos and pride, Black women said, we gonna handle this. You stand in front of the camera, but we gonna handle the stuff behind the scenes and get stuff done. It seems to me, and I just want to get your thoughts on this, it seems to me that of late, Black women are pushing the envelope, being creative, innovative. Like you said, they're walking in their truth. And it seems to me that Black women are much more bold and courageous, particularly in corporate settings, than Black men. And I have this crazy theory, and it could be crazy. But to me, I really believe that Black women understand that no matter how hard they work or no matter what they do, they will never be invited to the club. Whereas I think brothers, I think we have been led to believe if I work hard enough, if I try to camouflage my Blackness and all this kind of stuff, they will let me in. How does that sound to you?
I did watch I watched Dawn, and I texted with her after it, and she did such a great job. It was a great show. There's this idea, and I think even Dawn said it, if you want to sit, if no one offers you a seat at the table, pull up a chair. And I've always, the work that I do now is so rooted in teaching young people how to use their voices constructively. And we talk about the fact that, if you don't have a seat at the table, you're usually on the menu, right? I tell young people, you don't have a seat at the table, you're on the menu. Right. And so it resonates with them. But this idea of just having voice, not necessarily having to be loud, but being thoughtful and being focused and being direct and being willing to have uncomfortable conversations, because the more discomfort we have, the more uncomfortable conversations, people will begin to get comfortable. right now we're seeing we're seeing young people just storm. Take just the mobilization of young people across the globe, for me, is probably the most promising thing that I'm seeing, because you're seeing young people say, this is my life, this is my future. I'm demanding to have a seat at the table. I'm demanding that you hear my voice, right? And so you're seeing climate justice, young people who are raised in rights respecting environments across the globe, right? Our young people here have no rights. Like, if American children realized that they were the only children in the world that don't have rights, I wonder what that would mean for them. But when you see there's the climate justice, you see March for Our Lives as a result of the Parkland shooting, and now you see Black Lives Matter, you see these young people at the crux of these movements, right? Throughout history, young people have led movements. But now what you're seeing that's pretty neat is this intersection. Now you're seeing this integration and this coming together of all these different movements. There is no climate justice if there's no racial justice. And so that is like the holy grail. That's when you see young people across the globe that are like, okay, I got you. And that's when you start to see change. And that's what gives me hope. What we have gone through, the fact that we've raised these young people, people call them, where the millennials, they're so outspoken. Well, good. I can't get enough of it. All I want to do in my job is hire these young people who have voice, who think they need to be at the table when sometimes they don't. And it's our job to help them understand why that might not be right for you right now. Just teach them to be self-aware.
Thank you. That's awesome.
So, Anuka, we're going to make you king and queen for the day. So you've worked in professional sports and you've worked in intercollegiate sports. Where do you see it going, and what recommendations would you give to somewhat right the ship? Because everybody sees with these lawsuits and everything else that there are some serious problems that need to be addressed and need to be fixed. Where would you start?
Well, just with because of the work that I currently do with young people, they are more than capable of making decisions for themselves. They are more than capable of handling their own money and their own finances. They're more than capable of having a seat at the table and speaking their truth. I don't think we're in this, I was raised to be seen and not heard. Like that was my upbringing. But I also was taught by, a strong Black woman to speak up when it's necessary, but be thoughtful about how you do it. So, I do think that what we're seeing transpire across professional sports, where our young men and women are speaking up, we didn't see that 20 years ago, right? They're using their social platforms, they're using their popularity to have voice around some key issues, important issues. And we're seeing that now at the collegiate level. We're seeing at the high school level. So this is not something that we can shut down. These young people, they're not indentured servants. If they're student athletes, they're not indentured servants. There's an expectation that they're respected, and they're demanding for respect. And those that are going to be successful are those that are not fighting this. The success happens when you become an ally. And so it's this idea of allyship, right? When I worked at Madison Square Garden, there was always this friction between the unions that would drive you had one union that would sweep the pile of garbage into a pile, and another union had to pick it up. And we were like, okay, why is there 5 hours between the pickup and the sweep, right? And that causes a lot of rodents. And so the question was, why aren't these unions working together? And so I remember going to this Disney Institute of customer service, how can you make this happen? And I remember sitting and talking, and I'm like, yeah, but that's going to be hard at Madison Square Garden. We have so many unions. And the guy at Disney said, yeah, we have 25 unions. And the difference is that when we're making decisions, those unions are sitting at the table. And if you give these young people a voice and you give them an opportunity and you respect them, regardless of how young they are, then things are going to go a lot better for you. And so I think those that are fighting this, those that are not accepting the change, are the ones who are going to be left behind.
We have a question from one of our viewers. She asks, have you seen any tech innovation gaps needing to be filled in the sports industry?
Tech innovation gaps. I would say that, there's this fine line between collecting student athlete data and protecting them with biometric devices. And so I think the challenge is, how do we utilize that? Because I do think it's groundbreaking. It can certainly help protect student athletes and help them develop. But I do think the gap is determining how we ensure that the data is not used, right? In many instances, you have companies that provide the technology, putting it in the facilities, and because of that, they've made an investment. They have rights to data, and so this issue of data ownership is going to continue to plague the sport. But I do think that there's incredible value in having that at play, and using it as a way not only to ensure that we do no harm, but also to help players exceed.
Before we get ready to let you go, Ms. Brown, we always try to have a solution conversation, right? And I know that we could talk to you for hours probably, because there's so much that I know that I personally would love to pick your brain about and just learn from you about. But like I said, we like to have solutions that we present to our audience and that we put out there, because that's what we believe this show is about, figuring out certain solutions that could help us continue to improve and get better. And so the question that we want to answer today is just, how do we get more Black women on the business and administrative side of sports? And how do we also garner that support from those around us?
Well, I have been lifted throughout my career, no matter where what the situation was, whether it was the sexual harassment lawsuit that I had to fight when I was part of Madison Square Garden, right? Left me very lonely and on this road of what's my next opportunity. Every single opportunity that I have had in my career has been there because of this idea of executive sponsorship, right? After I was thrown into this federal lawsuit at Madison Square Garden, I was told I was committing professional suicide if I did that. And had it not been for Ward Manuel, who is the current athletic director at Michigan, who was the athletic director at Buffalo, who tapped me and said, "Hey, I have an opportunity for you." Now, I had maintained contact. He's been in my circle, and no, I was not hireable. No one wanted to touch me. And he sponsored me. He took me on, and he taught me everything there was to know about collegiate athletics. And so I would say we need more men to be sponsoring women, because men are emerging into these chairs, right? They are sitting ADs. Many men are sitting ATs, Black, white, and we need them. I was raised in this environment that my mother used to always, her mantra was, lift as you rise, right? No matter where you are in your career, you always have an opportunity to lift up another woman. And so that's kind of how I've lived my career. And I've been really fortunate to have people, Kevin's been in my corner and has lifted me. When I worked at the NCAA and had to manage committees, I could always call Kevin and say, "Kevin, how am I doing here? What can I be doing better?" This idea of truly surrounding these Black women that are coming up through the ranks with support. And it's something that the white men do all the time, right? This needs to become part of our work, our everyday work, to make sure that each one of us has like 5 or 6, 10 that we are looking out for every day, and we're watching from the earliest point in their career all the way through. Because the biggest challenges are not just getting that seat, but then being comfortable in that seat and being able to, when you become an athletic director, right? You want to make sure that you have relationships across campus. You want to make sure that you can foster relationships with your coaches, with your administration, that you are sought out and you are in allyship with your student athletes, right? You need to be reminded about that. And sometimes those skills don't necessarily come naturally, but they come through the allyship of other athletic directors that are sitting in the chair. And so we need more of that in order to bring more women up into the ranks. It's, the one thing I will add as part of this is this idea of avoiding isolation. And I'll say this, I bring this from the business side. So there are probably 20 women that I've mentored in my life that were more on the business side, like the IBM corporate side. And one of the things that I would tell them is, make sure you pick up the business section of the New York Times every day, right? So you know what's going on. So you have an elevator conversation and you're aware, right? But some of these techniques to avoid being isolated in the workplace as a Black woman, as a Black individual, that takes some skill. And some of those are soft skills that we don't necessarily have, and you have to learn them. And so if we're willing to talk to each other about those sometimes uncomfortable conversations, but really lifting young Black women up, then they won't become isolated in the workplace. And they'll learn how to work across the table and to make sure that they are ensured to have relationships across campus in all of those areas with donors. Some of those things we didn't cut our teeth at the table. My father worked in a brewery for 26 years, right? And my white counterpart probably cut his teeth on how to ask for a raise and how to ask for promotion. And so, so there's just differences in how we're raised and what we come from that we have to make sure that we talk about amongst each other. So that's what I really, that's what it's going to take.
I greatly appreciate. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Doc.
No, just a quick question. I've noticed, Anuka, that it seems like the athletic directors now that are the most popular, people being hired, all they are is fundraisers. And I'm amazed, Anuka, that some of these men and women can get hired for these AD jobs and they have no plan for student athlete development. I remember I was in Santa Monica talking about 50 ADs with Kevin, and I asked some of them privately, how many hours a day, how many hours a week do you spend on thinking about student athlete welfare and how to enhance the student athlete experience? And AD, one of Kevin's friends, shook his head and he said, Leonard, we don't spend no time on that. And that's why we need more sisters in that AD chair and more brothers in the AD chair, because they get it. So I'm sorry, that was more of a statement than a question, but I just wanted to throw that out there.
I would answer that by saying this is a time of reckoning. These young people are taken to the streets, they're speaking up, and athletic directors need to have, if you can't engage with this age group, like this is about you have firefighters that are running to the fire and other people are running away. If you're an athletic director in today's climate, today's environment, you better have some skills, some social skills, and have an understanding of this group of young people that are a force to be reckoned with.
Absolutely.
And we should be celebrating that they're a force to be reckoned with.
Absolutely.
For sure. Ms. Brown, we greatly appreciate you joining us and talking all about your experience, dropping gems on us, because you dropped a few. And I think one that I really loved is speak up but make sure you're thoughtful. That one right there really stuck with me. But we greatly appreciate your time joining us here on Fourth and JustUs. We hope to have you back again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, that was our guest, Miss Anuka Brown. She was awesome, y'all. I could talk to her. I could talk to her all day. But before we wrap up the show, of course, we have to get your solutions, present you all the same question that we asked Miss Brown. How do we get more Black women involved in the business or administrative side of sports? And how do we garner that support for them as well? AD?
I'll echo what Anuka said. One is sponsorship, but the other is recruitment. And, you know, when people say, well, I can't find anybody, well, you can't find anybody because you're not looking for them, because they're out there and there's so many different avenues and so many different ways to connect that if you're committed and you really want to do it, then you will be able to. But you have to get out there first, and you have to realize the pool of talent that's there. And so it's rather easy, and it's not complicated. It's just a matter of effort.
Doc?
I think we have to, Lericia, begin to create our own opportunities. My daughter's home from school. You know, she played Division I basketball in San Antonio. And because of COVID, you know, there were really no study abroad opportunities this summer for her, or internship opportunities. So guess what I did as her daddy? I created one for her. She got injured her senior year in high school, missed her whole senior year pretty much, broke her foot the day after signing day. Look how God works. But anyway, you know, we were talking the other day. She's a rehab sciences major. She wants to go into sports medicine. I said, okay, your project for the next 2 months, I need you to call up as many women who play women's college basketball who got injured. And I just want you to interview them about how they handled their energy, the injury. Did they get depressed? Did they go through anxiety, things of that nature? And I said, what I want you to do is start building a body of work. You know what I mean? Because you want to be in sports medicine one day. And I said, what better way to spend the next 7 or 8 weeks just getting these stories of Black women who've overcome injuries and how they cope. So we got to start creating our own opportunities, because the internship stuff, Lericia, it just may not be there. But I, as her dad, you know, we get in the cut every single day. I'm like, okay, how many girls you interview today? And I'm pushing her, but this is what we have to do. Because I'll tell you this, Lericia, the business of sport, Kevin knows this, it is immune to economic downturns. No matter what's going on, people in Tallahassee, Lericia, gonna buy tickets to go see those Seminoles play. And so we just got to be on the opposite side of the playing field. We need to be up there counting the money or getting one of the many jobs that Black labor actually produces.
They sure are. Final thoughts, Doc. We can start with you. Final thoughts before we wrap up the show.
I don't know. This Northwestern thing is really interesting, and Anuka said it best. You know, we have some issues going on at UT with the Eyes of Texas, and I've been telling a lot of my friends who are influential donors, you have to sit down and talk with students. You can't talk at them, and you can't make demands of them. This generation is different, and what we saw with Black Lives Matter, this is now a multiracial coalition. It ain't just all Black folks.
AD, your final thoughts?
Happy birthday to the best baseball player that ever played baseball. Willie Mays turned 90 last week. And young folk like you, Lericia, might not know who he is, but he was better than Babe Ruth, Hank. I mean, he was the best. So happy birthday, Willie.
I know who he is. I know who he is, AD. Dang, you just called me out like that. My final thoughts. I'm just hungry, guys.
I was just giving you props for being so young and talented and energetic.
Well, my energy is definitely dwindling down because I'm hungry. No, I'm just kidding. My energy is always here for you all. We greatly appreciate. We greatly appreciate you all for joining us for another episode of Fourth and JustUs. Always remember to like us on Facebook, where you're watching us on Facebook Live right now, and subscribe to us on YouTube, where you might be watching us as well. We love the comments, we love the questions, and we hope that you continue that conversation and other intriguing questions that you might have on our next show next week. We'll see you all then. Have a great evening. Thanks for joining us.